Welcome to another big match build-up show, and this episode is sponsored by OneFootball. Do check out the excellent free OneFootball app to be notified of all the latest transfer news, scores and stats all in one place. To download the OneFootball app, click the link in the description below the show. So, after another double game week for Saints, and I'm working extra hard to prepare another build-up show for you, but after FA Cup action on Wednesday and another case of derby deja vu, this time with Italy disappointed, as Saints were eventually eliminated on penalties after squandering another 2-0 lead. But I suppose the cliche is we can now fully focus on the Premier League and staying up this season. No more domestic cups to worry about. More time to rest, more time to prepare. December and January, we have been blighted by injuries and suspensions. So, this Saturday, we are back in Premier League action at St Mary's to play Everton with the return of some key players. So, on this week's show, we team up once again with the excellent Total Saints podcast to preview the visit of Everton and hoping for a sweet result against the Toffees. And for this week's opposition, we speak to the Everton Fan Channel, Toffee TV, and they tell us why the terrible inconsistencies for Marco Silva's men. We've done well, I think, to come through this sort of little run of 2 or 3 games that we've had with the likes of Chelsea and Leicester with a very thin squad, some players not being unavailable, but we picked up 4 points out of 6. As I say, the momentum's starting to build. There's players coming back now, so you do kind of hope with some more winnable fixtures around the corner that we can have a bit of a positive run towards the end of the season.
It's been absolutely awful, and we've got no consistency to our play, and that's why we are where we are. And I suppose that's why anyone 7th to 13th is where they are, is because one week they can be good and the next week they can be terrible. And we are very much in that pack at the moment.
So as usual then, this episode is available to download in the card above my head if you're watching on YouTube, or available on most audio platforms below the show. Do let us know, of course, how you think Saints can bounce back this weekend. And now it's time to kick off our big match build-up show as Everton visit Southampton. So welcome along then to our first half of our Everton big match build-up show, and returning here on the preview this week, host of the Total Saints podcast, Ben Stansfield. Really good to see you again, mate.
Evening, Freddie. Yep, keeping well?
Yeah, not too bad. Keeping busy, as always. I suppose we better say a small disclaimer. We're also recording the night before we were crashing out of the FA Cup to Derby County. So all we know, though, Ben, is Hasenhüttl. He's had a dwindling squad over the last few fixtures. A few names clearly overlooked, publicly known that they haven't got a future under his tenure, I suppose. And the past few weeks, we've seen a lot of the youngsters making some of the appearances.
How refreshing has it been, Freddie? I've got to say, as a fan, we've spent 12, 18, 24 months watching the same players put the same heartless and passionless performances in. What a guy Hasenhüttl's been. I mean, you and I spoke last time just before he was about to take over. I think it was the day before he was officially appointed, and he's done exactly what he said he would do. He's given everyone a chance. Those that wanted to go on the journey with him put the effort in. They're getting game times. We've seen some of the youngsters step up and really put in some fantastic performances. He's won 3 out of his 6, call it 7 if you want, Cardiff games. To me, it feels like we're really, starting to get back on that sort of wave that's heading in an upward direction. So I think he's done exactly what he said he would, and he's ruffled a few feathers. And I think as fans, we absolutely appreciate that needed to happen.
Yeah, and we love it. Everyone's singing his name once again in the stands at Leicester at the weekend as well. But I suppose you probably might know a little bit more so than most, speaking to Adam every week on the podcast. I mean, what is there to know about the future of Wesley Hoot and Fraser Forster?
Yeah, Adam doesn't tell me more than he needs to be honest, because I think he knows he can't trust me. But I think it's been well evidenced, hasn't it, that Fraser Forster is not someone that they're desperately going to ship on. But if the right opportunity comes up for him, then they will look to get him out and get him some game time. He's obviously on a very long-term and very lucrative contract, Freddie. So I think part of the problem with that, and I think it's common knowledge, it's not something Adam has told me, is that Saints are looking for a club to pick up a large percentage of his wages. The trouble is, a large percentage of his wages is 50, 60k a week. So that's going to be the issue. There's been that link with Leeds United. We'll obviously see if that goes anywhere. In terms of Wesley Hoyt, it's all been rather cloak and dagger, I think, other than what we've seen in the Echo, which is that he just doesn't fancy him, for whatever reason. I think we can only assume that Hoyt doesn't fancy putting in the effort on the training ground like the others do. And I guess they still feel they can command a decent fee for him, 10, 15 million pound maybe, that could be reinvested. So again, I think most Saints fans will chuckle to sort of, really try and work out whether there's a team out there that would fancy buying him. I think that's going to be the bigger issue.
Yeah, and it's totally baffling. Every single week it seemed like under Mark Hughes he was guaranteed a starting position, but we have recouped a small fee from Manuel Gabbiadini, just shy of, it's 12 million euros, just over sort of 10 million pounds. So there is some money in the kitty at the moment, I suppose, but until we get a little bit more in return for Forster or perhaps in Davis, but we've sort of recouped back on his wages, and I suppose until we sell Wesley Hoot, there isn't much to spend.
No, I think that's the thing, is it? We spent 50 million in the summer, which was a large chunk of the Van Dijk money. We've got Danny Ings, to my knowledge, is already signed and sealed 20 million next summer. So that pretty much is the Van Dijk money. So I think, to me, and I think most fans, again, will understand that we're probably looking at loans and probably trying to find free transfers. You think of Martin Caceres coming in a couple of years back there will be players out there. But yeah, I don't think any of us should get excited about spending 20, 30 million pounds this window, Freddie, because I think whether the money's there or not, none of us really know. But I don't think any of us, really think that there's lots and pots of gold there to spend.
And we all know, obviously, the January window, the prices of the players are also inflated, so it becomes even more difficult as well. But I suppose we better just lightly touch upon the Derby game. Frank Lampard was in the press earlier this week saying that Derby will play without fear at Southampton. And I guess we assume that it might be a very similar squad that we saw 10 days ago at Pride Park.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, recording this the day before the game? But I think the fact is now it's on national television. Neither team's going to want to be embarrassed, I don't think. So, it could sway the way that Hasenhüttl has thought. It could sway the way that Frank Lampard has thought. And again, by the time this goes out, everyone will know the answer to that. But he's been playing we said youngsters, as Adam said in the pod at the weekend, some of the players like Sam Gallagher, they're not youngsters anymore. So, he's not afraid to blend the sort of youth and experience in there. And I would imagine, as I say, the day before Derby, that he will do that and again, get some of them back up towards match fitness for the Everton game that we're obviously previewing.
Yeah, and I suppose whatever the outcome for both teams, I suppose that they could turn it on its head and say, look, we're always prioritising the league over the cup, but it is a very nice tie away at Accrington Stanley, awaiting in the next round. I know, yeah. I knew that was coming, absolutely. Like you said in your pod, actually, anybody, I suppose, under the age of 30 doesn't know that reference.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I mean, the draw came out, didn't it? And I think you probably look at it both ways. Again, as Saints fans, we've had a few experiences over the years of being put out of the cup by a smaller size. Accrington Stanley certainly won't fancy, will certainly fancy, taking us apart, I'm sure, and giving us a rough game on their pitch. So it's the sort of game that you think, yep, there's an opportunity to get through to the next round there. But likewise, it's a banana skin. I was watching some of the Woking-Watford game the other day, and Chris Sutton made a great point, which is, for Watford, that was a no-win game. You win, everyone expects you to win. You lose, you hear all about it. And it'll be very similar for Saints or probably Derby at Accrington Stanley.
Yeah, so it is back to Premier League focus then, Everton at the weekend. And it was the first, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the first away game of the season.
That's right.
Seems like such a long time ago in the depths of the high summer. Now we're in the cold, harsh winters.
I know it does, doesn't it? And I automatically think back to Wesley Hoyt making mistakes in that game. But yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, Danny Ings got his first goal for the club that day. And, Saints had opportunities to get something up at Everton. It's never been a particularly happy hunting ground, has it? So hopefully we can, give them one back in this match.
And on the flip side as well, I suppose I look back at the recent head-to-head record, and I think Everton have only won once, and that was 4 years ago on the very opening day of the season. I think it must have been under Ronald Koeman, where they sort of hammered us 3-0. But other than that, they haven't got a very good record down at St Mary's or the Dell, in fact.
No, you're right. I mean, it's always been our bogey ground up there, and likewise, even at the Dow, as you say, I always remember that Everton we beat them. You think of that sort of Marian Pajas scoring the goals when we needed them in the relegation season, staying up, and again, I think it was, as you say, Roberto Martinez won 3-0 a few seasons back. But again, they've never done particularly well down here, and their form at the moment, I think they've got 6 points out of their last 6 games. They beat Bournemouth at the weekend, but again, as Steve said in our podcast, Bournemouth could well have been ahead in that game and should have probably had a penalty as well. So they've got a lot of talent in their team, Everton. There's no doubt about that. Whether there may be more a group of individuals than they are a team, you don't know. But I think certainly for Saints, it's a game that we've got to look at getting 3 points.
Yeah, and Everton aren't made up to what they're all made up to be in the press, really. I mean, they spent a lot of money in the summer, but they're not putting up any trees at the moment. Like you say, 2 wins in the last sort of 6 or so games. And they aren't I suppose they're not in any danger of sort of dropping anywhere either.
No, and again, you look at the amount of money they've spent over the last 2-3 years. I mean, as I said in the podcast, it must be well north of 250 million now, and they are still a pretty average team playing average football mid-table. So again, for all those Saints fans out there that clamour for us to spend millions and millions of pounds on players that again are interested in just getting Premier League wages, it probably is a perfect example that money doesn't guarantee you success. So I think they've got a good squad, as I say. There's no doubt about that, but there's a lot of average sides in the Premier League, I think, and Everton are certainly one of them, similar to ourselves.
But what Wednesday also offers an opportunity for the suspended players to actually return for the weekend. So we will see the return of Austin, Valerie, Højbjerg back in the team as well. And actually Hasenhüttl admitted that in his presser a few days ago, that's probably the only positive coming from the replay.
Yeah, and it is a positive, isn't it? I mean, Højbjerg's been probably, alongside Redmond, one of our best performers this season. I think disciplinary-wise, he's let himself down a bit, but you hope that over time the experience will mean that he's not making those decisions that he maybe has done. But yeah, I mean, the cup game has come at a good time because it will also give a few players some match fitness. Dan Ings, I think he's probably going to give some game time. We may well have seen Ryan Bertrand play some of the game as well to try and get him ready for Everton as well, Freddie. So it's probably come, just at the right time, and hopefully will mean that when we go into Everton, we've got a bigger squad to choose from and a few more fresh faces.
Yeah, and I suppose last week we talked about an individual key player. He said, he gave Jack Stevens the public backing that he gives the leadership in the back line as well. But I was very impressed by James Ward-Prowse at the weekend at Leicester City, and there's a quote that was online. It said Ward-Prowse was conspicuous by his absence from Hasenhüttl's first few selections, but he's been impressing the new manager and with his versatility and hunger in recent weeks.
The thing about Prowse is, I think that's why he's frustrated so many of us, because he's played he's getting on for 200 Premier League games, I think now. So exactly. So I mean, he should really have delivered more than he has done, and I'm sure, like a lot of players, that the constant change of manager probably hasn't helped him. But I think again, he's one of those players, we know he's got it in him, and he's been sort of dubbed as this set piece specialist, but there's more to his game than that. He's started to show a bit more of a ruthless side, a bit more experience in terms of covering for Jan Valerie against Manchester City to provide him some support defensively the other week. So, we know he's got that ability, Freddie. And I think the thing about Prowse is, for me, this is the sort of manager that will get that out of him, that will encourage him, that will get him working up and down the pitch. And, he's got the shirt at the moment. Again, there's players coming back. But for me, he's someone that, again, deserves his place in the starting lineup at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's also fair to say that he's been patient. He's bided his time, but I think also if you ask many people, he needs to toughen up, and I think we've seen an example of that this season as well. But I suppose we could ask about some returning of injuries this weekend. Lemina's been out for a couple of weeks. Again, Ings might be played a few minutes on Wednesday night, and I think for me it might be a bit too soon for Bertrand, but he has been returned to training this week.
Yeah, exactly. And, Mario Lemina, again, he's one of those players that we know can turn it on. He's unfortunately playing very hot and cold. I think Oriol Romeo, based on his, performance up at Leicester, I think, again, is, for me, absolutely deserves to be starting in the centre of midfield against Everton, whoever's fit. I imagine it will probably be Romeo and Højbjerg and Prowse, those three that he'll choose from. But, we've done well, I think, to come through this sort of little run of 2 or 3 games that we've had with the likes of Chelsea and Leicester with a very thin squad. Some players being unavailable, but we picked up 4 points out of 6. As I say, the momentum's starting to build. There's players coming back now, so you do kind of hope with some more winnable fixtures around the corner that we can have a bit of a positive run towards the end of the season now, and hopefully be a lot more comfortable and staying up than we should be. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also an important time for Saints at the moment. We've certainly got a set of winnable fixtures, like say, starting off with Everton, then we've got Crystal Palace at home, followed by an away trip, you could say, potentially a 6-pointer at Burnley at the start of February, and it is a chance to open up some daylight with the bottom 3. Exactly. It works both ways, doesn't it? You lose those games, you put yourself under pressure, you go in and win them, and again, it works in the opposite direction. You're pushing up the table. I think the good thing, as I said right at the start, and as we've discussed, and many Saints fans are discussing, Hasenhüttl knows what he's doing. There's no doubt about that. He's going to go into all of these games with an individual plan about what individual players are going to do, what the team is going to do collectively. I have absolutely no doubt that he will rock up to these games with a specific game plan on how he's going to take on each one of those opponents, rather than just going with a generic, well, we high press, we play 4-4-2, whatever. We play the same players if they put in a good performance. He's not afraid to chop and change the team. He's not afraid to chop and change, as we've seen in goal, Angus Gunn coming in and then McCarthy coming back in as well. So I think all of us are confident that for all of those games, he will turn up knowing exactly what he will do. And more importantly, Freddie, the players will know what they're doing.
And how confident are we feeling for a win at the weekend?
Yeah, well, I stuck to tradition, Freddie. I don't want to get too carried away. So I did predict a 1-1 draw. But look, as I say, I think Saints are, this is a good benchmark for Saints now. We've come away from two really tough away games, and this is a chance, it feels like a long time since we beat Arsenal at St Mary's, and it'd be nice to get a win back on the board. I hope by the time people are watching this, we've beaten Derby as well. But, it's a good chance for Saints to lay down a marker again at home in the Premier League and boost that confidence ahead of the run into the end of the season. Yeah, excellent stuff. And hopefully, if you are watching, if you haven't subscribed to Ben's podcast, just remind everybody where we can find you and everybody else. Yeah, sure. So we're on SoundCloud, Freddie. We're on iTunes, Acast are the main three. I think that covers iOS and Android for anyone that wants to listen to us. You can find us on Twitter at Total Saints Pod, and the same address on Facebook. Just look up Total Saints Podcast. Super stuff. Really good to speak to you, Ben. We'll speak soon. Cheers, Freddie. Take care.
Huge thanks once again to Ben from the Total Saints podcast this week. That's 2 weeks in a row we've got a Ben on the show. But if you haven't already, do make sure you subscribe to their podcast. Head over to their social pages, give them a like and a follow. I'm sure they will appreciate it. And of course, do let us know your predictions for the weekend and what sort of team do you think Hasenhüttl will field, considering we played 120 minutes on Wednesday. But time now then to move on to our opposition. Join us for our second half as we find out everything to expect from Everton. So welcome along then to our second half of our big match build-up show. Everton visit St Mary's. It was the first away game of the season earlier this year. But here, once again, to talk to us. Also, we spoke to him for the League Cup game earlier on the season. But Ped from Toffee TV, really good to see you again, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate.
But it was a 2-0 victory at the weekend over Bournemouth. And what do you pin that down to? It's also only your sort of second win in the last sort of 6 games. And there was a Kurt Zouma header straight off Duncan Ferguson's DVDs.
The last month or so, we've just been poor, to be honest. We've just not really got the rub of the green in some games. And I think what tends to happen in any new manager is that you have a series of games where a new style is being implemented, and you're not really. I don't really know if you're playing that style or you're just getting through by good feeling and things like that. And I think we had that for a little bit, and then I think once we come into December, I think when an opposition side puts 10 men behind the ball, I think we find it very, very hard to break them down. When we're playing better sides, we're not good enough to break them down. So I think Bournemouth was a classic case of a team who come to play, but weren't good enough to beat us, but also didn't try and stop us defensively. So I think that's a reason why we won on Sunday. It was a hard game, it was a hard fought game, but because they came to play and didn't really have the tools to beat us, we ended up winning the game. It was, as I said, it was a hard fought victory, and that's been the real case in the last few months. It's just last month. It's just a case of Marco Silva's hit this period now where he's made the team better, but then as everyone else's tactics catch up with what he's doing, he hasn't been able to take us on again. So this is the difficult bit now, trying to elevate us to that next level.
Bonus at the weekend, it was the first clean sheet since November as well. But you spoke about players coming in and out of the summer. But one player we sort of noted actually earlier on in the season is Lucas Digne. You said at the time in August he was going to be Eastern, but it looks like he seems displaceable at the moment, scoring a few goals, being a very influential figure in the side at the moment.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. He's so calm and composed on the ball. It is like we've just picked another Leighton Baines and put him into the side. He fits absolutely perfectly. He's up to the pace of the Premier League without a problem. He looks like someone who doesn't have sort of the pace, the rapid pace, but he's got something a little bit different about him. I think the goal that Zuma scored on Sunday was, you can see what he's got in there. He's got the defender faced up, and you think, well, he tries to throw a cross in, now the defender will just block it. But the way he manages to get the ball past defenders, and that's probably because he hasn't got that lightning pace that allows him to get a couple of yards on him. So he's developed this crossing in it, and he's brilliant at it. Set pieces have got a lot better. He's grown as a player. There's been no problem with him settling. He speaks perfect English. He's really up for it as well. And yeah, he's been one real success this season. I mean, all the players we've bought have settled in quite well. Some of them have been in and out, and just generally, but him as a player has been consistent all the way through.
And what it is as well, there's been a couple of rumours flying around the gossip columns, I suppose, and a player that was fairly influential under Big Sam's approach, and the big sort of bullish centre forward Cenk Tosun. You also picked up quite a lot of Turkish followers because of it as well. But
yeah.
It seems like he's out of favour at the moment as well. But another player too, also linked with Saints recently, is Ademola Lookman. What do you make of these rumours that are flying around at the moment? Is there much truth to the Lookman rumour?
Nothing whatsoever. There's no way on earth he's leaving Everton Football Club, and I'm not. I don't want to disrespect Southampton, but if he left Everton, he'd only go up, because he's an absolutely brilliant player. And there's no way he's leaving Everton Football Club. He wanted to leave in the summer. He wanted to go back to Germany because he'd had a good spell there, and obviously other English players were playing there, and he felt like his time at Everton was done, and almost like he couldn't be bothered having to sort of restart again. And the manager told me he wasn't going anywhere. The manager told him that he had a future at the club, and he just had to bide his time, and that's what he's done. And unfortunately, he had an injury over Christmas, and he would have played a lot more games over Christmas, but he's had an injury, and he came back. He came back last week against Lincoln, scored, played this week, set up the goal, and he looks a lot more at home now. I think he's got things that people take for granted. I think he's got like more friends at the club now and things like that. I think things like he was living in a hotel and he had no family, and I don't think he'd settled in, and all these little things conspired against him. But he looks a lot happier now. Fans have just noted that he seems smiling a lot more in training. The manager does see a future for him, and to be honest, the only player I can see leaving Everton going to Southampton is Theo Walcott. I really can in the summer imagine Theo Walcott will end up at Southampton, because I just don't see a future at him. I know he's only been at the club for a year, but I think in the summer Everton will look to buy a fast, speedy winger, and I think Theo will leave, and I can imagine Southampton being a likely destination for him.
I'm sure you also go into depth about Lookman's review at the weekend, and I'm sure others can go over and watch that. It seems like you and Baz are very impressed. But the next 5 fixtures, actually, I noticed one of your tweets the other day, and you asked your followers, I mean, how many points do you think you'll get from the next 5 fixtures? So Saints away, Huddersfield away, Wolves at home, Watford away, and Man City at home.
No idea. That's why I tweet. That's why I ask other people. Because and the reason I say that is that this Everton team I make no bones about it. I think we are where we are. I'm not someone who can sit here and hand on heart and say we deserve to be 7th, or we deserve to be this, or we deserve to be anywhere. Early on in the season, things were ticking over nicely, and we've hit a bump in the road. And I can't honestly sit here and say, oh, we should be doing a lot better, and results have gone against us. In some games, we've been absolutely awful, and we've got no consistency to our play, and that's why we are where we are. And I suppose that's why anyone 7th to 13th is where they are, is because one week they can be good and the next week they can be terrible. And we are very much in that pack at the moment. And listen, if we'd beaten Leicester, say on New Year's Day, we'd be sitting on 7th place and things might look better. But I think it's a wake up call to the fact that things don't just happen overnight. And I honestly don't know. Everton are just an absolute. We're not a mess. We're just massively inconsistent. And I think that what we look at as fans, and it's very hard now to have patience, but as a fan, I almost feel like this season is an audition for the manager and for certain players, and that's been lost in the last month, because I think before we played Liverpool in the derby, you went to every game thinking, it's fine. Whatever happens. We're quite happy with the way it's going this season. And when we played Liverpool in the derby, we were around sixth. I think we were sixth, and people were thinking, could we sneak into top six, fifth? And then the press were like, could they? And then that expectation grows then, and with expectation comes pressure. And if things go the other way, then people are saying, well, what happened? We were flying, and you were like, hang on, what happened to? We're going to give the manager a season. So I think what we've got to do is, in the next couple of games, 2 or 3 games, is pick up a couple of wins, get to that magic, 36, 38 mark, whatever it is. So everyone goes, okay, we've done that bit now. Now you can just sort of get on with the rest of the season. Next 4 games, if we can stay unbeaten and pick a couple of wins up, I'll be probably quite happy with that.
Well, I think it is fair to say you're in a league of your own, and to be honest, I don't think there's too much pressure of actually dropping out of that bracket of 6 or 7 teams. But you have said in previous sort of notes, I suppose, but coming down to St Mary's isn't always going to be easy, and the record isn't as well as you might think. Actually, we've got a poor record at Goodison, but equally you've got a poor record at St Mary's. What do you think your approach, and what's your prediction going to be at the weekend?
I think it's going to be a very tough game. Again, you talk about fixtures. A couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago or so, we're looking at this fixture going, Southampton bottom 3. Nice one. You change your manager, you suddenly look like you can win games of football and tough them out as well. Going to Leicester and winning with a man sent off is really difficult. So I look at that and think, well, you've got a mental strength. Can we match that mental strength? And I think it's good. I'll be honest, I can see it being a draw. I'd take a draw on Saturday. I know that might sound negative, but I would. I can imagine it being like a 2-2, because I think we struggle to keep clean sheets. I imagine you struggle to keep clean sheets, so it might just be a game to dog out, and we don't dog too many games out. So I'd honestly take a point on Saturday and hope that when we go to Huddersfield 10 days later, we can get 3 points there. But I think we are meeting you at the worst possible time. So I'd probably take a draw, and that might seem. That might seem poor, but we've only won a couple of away games all season, so I can't sit here in January saying, Southampton's going to be a breeze, because it's not. As you said, we don't have a brilliant record there.
All right, well, there you have it then. Really good to speak to you again, Ped. Everyone can find you on all the usual platforms, on Twitter, Facebook, and everything else. Good to speak to you, and we'll speak again next season, I suppose.
Yeah, man.
Another big thanks then to Ped from Toffee TV. Do subscribe to their channels for all of your Everton needs. But that does wrap up this week's big match build-up show. And now that we're out the FA Cup, we're not in action next weekend, so I'll be taking a few days off to rest, and we'll be back for the Crystal Palace preview in a week or so time. But do check back in the meantime for our fan reactions after Saturday's result. And do let us know how you think Saints will get on this weekend. So thank you very much for watching and listening along. Only one thing left from me is, come on you Saints.